It is time to go on the docket with attorney John Patrick Dolan as he breaks down all of your legal news.
John, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Today we're talking about Proposition 8 and the Supreme Court. What can you tell us?
Well, tomorrow the Supreme Court is going to hear oral arguments. That's just the beginning of eventually coming up with an opinion. That'll happen somewhere around June. But the oral arguments are going to surround whether or not Proposition 8 is constitutional or unconstitutional, and whether or not the Ninth Circuit was proper in affirming Judge Von Walker's decision that Prop 8 was unconstitutional. Interesting about Judge Walker's decision, of course, the trial court decides what the facts are that are relevant, not the appellate courts. The appellate courts must accept the facts as found by the trial court. So in this case, Judge Walker issued an extensive opinion regarding factual findings, and I think that's going to be the difference. The interesting thing about his opinion was he made a decision based both on California state constitutional grounds and federal constitutional grounds, sort of foreseeing that this would end up on the Supreme Court of the United States. So the Supreme Court could take a narrow decision and say, we affirm the Ninth Circuit, who affirmed Judge Walker, and we say that that's based on constitutional law in California, and leave it at that. Or they could take the bigger picture and say this is a federal question, because of course the next day, on Wednesday, they talk about DOMA, and the federal question says equal protection and due process require that all people be allowed to marry regardless of which state is involved. The next day, as I mentioned, DOMA comes up, and DOMA is much different. DOMA is about 1,100 different rights enjoyed by married couples that work for the federal government that are denied same-sex couples. So the two cases are related, but not exactly the same. But both of them will be heard on Tuesday and Wednesday tomorrow and the next day. And I'd say about June, we're going to get a decision.
Wow.
Definitely a lot of people keeping up with that case, of course. Now, the Jodi Arias case, that has been going on for weeks. And at first I was, very into it. And then after a while, I think a lot of people are kind of getting burned out from the case. But what is going to happen now with that case?
Well, as you know, she was on the witness stand for 19 days, which is pretty much unheard of. The last several days, last week, had to do with expert witnesses that are called regarding PTSD and her mental state. That'll continue today. We believe that probably the defense will be completed this week. Prosecution may or may not have a rebuttal, and probably about mid-April the jury is going to get this case. Be very interesting to see what happens, because either this is a planned, premeditated murder, or this is a rage killing that is more like a manslaughter. And her testimony, of course, would lead you to believe that it was a manslaughter, but you have to believe her testimony, and there are certainly a lot of critics about the believability of her testimony.
Yeah.
And even once we get the jury's verdict, it still can continue with appeals and that kind of thing.
Well, a couple of things. If it's a first-degree verdict, then they're going to have a second trial, which is about the penalty. Should it be the death penalty or life without the possibility of parole? If it's not a first-degree verdict, yes, there will still be an appeal, because I'm sure if she's convicted of anything, the lawyers are going to appeal and see whether or not there are some legal issues that could reverse the conviction.
So a lot of time in court.
Oh yeah, lots of things going on in that case.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, John. Always nice to see you. We'll see you back here next Monday after Easter.
Easter Monday, we'll be here.
Easter Monday. And here's a good-looking picture of you right there, John. For more information, all you have to do is log on to DolanLawOffices.com to find out more about JPD. The time right now is 27 minutes after the hour. Coming up, the morning's top news stories for you just ahead.